Imagine, just for a second, that we're putting together the ultimate true crime profile. But instead of looking at a modern criminal, we're going all the way back to ancient mythology's single most dangerous figure. We are going to explore a story that predates recorded history itself. It's the exact moment humanity was handed the tools to literally tear itself apart.
When we dive into ancient texts and mythological records, there are plenty of tales of rebellion, right? Lots of divine misbehavior. But out of all these ancient stories, we are looking for the one specific being explicitly named as the ultimate source of human sin, who actually taught humanity how to destroy itself.
Well, the primary suspect usually jumps right to mind. You're probably thinking of the devil himself. But actually, no. The architect of our physical corruption isn't the famous angel of light who waged a massive spiritual war in heaven.
It also wasn't Semyaza. You might know him as the infamous leader of the 200 fallen angels who swore that blood oath to abandon their celestial posts. And while he definitely led the charge, he wasn't the one who fundamentally changed human capability.
Instead, the culprit is Azazel. This is an entity so profoundly dangerous and so destructive that when divine judgment finally came down, he wasn't just cast out. He wasn't just banished to some spiritual realm. He was permanently imprisoned, bound hand and foot, and buried alive beneath the earth's surface in total suffocating darkness.
Section 1. The Fall of the Watchers.
Okay, to really understand Azazel's crime and why his punishment had to be so severe, we first need to look at his unique celestial order. We need to see how a mission of protection turned into the ultimate betrayal. So, in the absolute earliest days of human civilization, humanity was placed under the care of a group of divine beings known as the Watchers. Now, unlike your typical warrior angels like Michael or messenger angels like Gabriel, the Watchers had a very quiet, completely passive role. Their entire job was just to observe human life from a safe distance. Look, but don't touch. They were there to ensure our protection within permitted boundaries. But as they watched from the heavens century after century, that pure observation slowly morphed into an intense, forbidden yearning for human women.
And what's crucial to understand here is that this wasn't just a spontaneous mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was a slow, deliberate build. It began with observation, which inevitably bred longing. They were captivated. Eventually, 200 of these watchers gathered at the summit of Mount Hermon, and they made a calculated, organized pact. They swore an oath together, essentially agreeing to mutually cross that ultimate divine boundary. They descended to earth to take human wives and live among the very people they were supposed to be passively observing. It was a massive, highly organized conspiracy against the divine order.
But when they descended, they didn't come empty-handed. These Watchers brought cosmic secrets with them to trade with humanity. Some of them taught things like astrology, or the reading of clouds, or the use of roots and spells. But Azazel brought something much more tangible. He didn't just bring abstract magic, he brought a terrifying, practical reality that the human race was absolutely not ready for.
Section 2. The Art of Destruction.
And this brings us right to the core of Azazel's profile. It's the highly dangerous knowledge he intentionally leaked to the public. He was basically a rogue teacher, and his entire curriculum was devastation. You see, Azazel wasn't driven by simple lust or desire like the other Watchers were. His sin was entirely different. He was driven by this dark curiosity, a desire to teach forbidden mechanics. He actively chose to take sacred, highly advanced technological knowledge and hand it directly to a primitive, vulnerable species, fully knowing they would use it to annihilate each other.
His teachings were brilliantly, almost architecturally destructive, and they worked in two distinct ways. First, he taught men metallurgy. Think about this for a second. Before Azazel, humans fought with sticks and stones. The damage you could do was highly limited. But Azazel taught them how to extract and forge iron, how to create incredibly sharp swords, and how to craft shields and heavy armor. He literally introduced the science of warfare. But the second half of his teaching was just as destructive, even if it was far more subtle. He taught women the art of cosmetics, the use of precious metals for jewelry, and the creation of mirrors. Now, in the ancient world, this wasn't just about looking nice. It was about weaponizing beauty to wield the power of seduction and entirely disrupt established societal structures. He perfectly balanced the external, physical violence of men with the internal obsession and vanity sparked by women.
So, armed with these two highly effective new tools, humanity rapidly unraveled.
The immediate fallout was just catastrophic. The Earth, which up until then had only seen minor, primitive skirmishes, was suddenly absolutely soaked in blood from massive wars fought with steel and iron. At the exact same time, modest social orders completely collapsed. Families were being torn apart by this newfound vanity and seduction. Total unchecked violence and desire just overwhelmed the entire human race. And according to the ancient texts, the cries of the dead finally grew so overwhelmingly loud that they reached the very gates of heaven.
Basically, Azazel had designed a flawless self-destruct mechanism for humanity. He literally handed them a loaded gun, taught them exactly how to pull the trigger, and then just took a step back to watch the devastation unfold. Violence from the men, desire from the women. It was a perfect, inescapable loop of human corruption.
Section 3. Bound in the Desert. Now, when God saw the sheer scale of the ruin down on earth, the reaction wasn't just anger. It was a profound, deep grief that demanded a uniquely brutal sentence for the one who architected it all. God immediately dispatched his archangels to clean up the mess, but he gave the archangel Raphael a very specific, chilling order just for Azazel. Raphael was told to track him down out in the desolate, completely empty desert wasteland. Once found, he was to bind Azazel completely by his hands and feet. Then cast him deep into a dark, jagged pit torn into the earth, and cover him entirely with heavy, sharp rocks. And there he would be left, buried alive in total darkness until the end of the world.
What you really need to take away from this is the sheer, horrifying reality of his punishment. Azazel was not killed. He wasn't sent to hell or banished to some separate fiery spiritual dimension. He was physically trapped within the very earth he had just helped corrupt. Imagine that. Suffering a fully conscious, totally immobile isolation in absolute, crushing darkness for thousands upon thousands of years.
But the punishment didn't actually stop at physical imprisonment. God issued a massive cosmic decree regarding Azazel. The mandate was, ascribe all human sin to him. God legally mandated that every single act of violence, every forged blade that drew blood, every betrayal, and every war from that point forward was ultimately Azazel's fault. The entire crushing weight of the world's corruption was placed squarely on his buried shoulders.
Section 4. The first scapegoat.
And this divine mandate didn't just stay up in the heavens as some abstract concept. It actually translated into one of the most famous and fascinating rituals in ancient human history. In ancient traditions, specifically during the Day of Atonement, we see this decree brought to life. Here's how it worked. The high priest would take 2 goats before the people. The first one was sacrificed to God. But the second goat was treated entirely differently. The high priest would lay his hands on it and literally confess all the sins, all the crimes, and all the guilt of the entire nation right onto the animal's head. Then, this sin-burdened goat, which by the way is where we get the term scapegoat, was led far out into the deep desert wilderness and released, specifically sent toward Azazel. By following these exact steps, the ancient people were practicing a profound form of cosmic accounting.
They were symbolically taking all the terrible consequences of the gifts Azazel gave them, all the violence, the vanity, the destruction, and shipping that resulting guilt right back to his desert prison. They were returning the corruption directly to its ultimate source, fully acknowledging exactly where their absolute worst impulses originally came from.
Section 5. Lucifer versus Azazel.
To truly grasp Azazel's legacy, we have to contrast him with Lucifer. Pop culture so often mixes these two up or treats them like the same entity, but they actually represent 2 completely, entirely different types of threats. Look at how they fell. Lucifer fell upward. His sin was pride, an internal spiritual arrogance where he tried to usurp God's throne in a massive cosmic war. Honestly, he acted like a rogue CEO attempting a hostile takeover of heaven. Azazel, however, fell downward. His sin was external. It was technological. He had no interest in ruling heaven. He wanted to descend and reshape humanity by leaking dangerous, forbidden knowledge. If Lucifer was the hostile CEO, Azazel was the rogue engineer secretly handing out the blueprints for total destruction.
And honestly, this is exactly why Azazel's story is so incredibly, chillingly relevant today. He embodies the specific, terrifying reality of a species possessing immense technological power and knowledge long before they have the moral wisdom or the spiritual maturity to use it safely. He perfectly represents the existential danger of our tools vastly outpacing the people holding them.
Just look around at our modern world.
We are constantly obsessively building newer, more devastating weapons. We're creating ever more addictive digital technologies that completely disrupt our social fabrics and prey on our vanity. It really begs the question, have we ever actually stopped suffering from Azazel's teachings? Or are we still, after all these millennia, just playing with the exact same tools he buried us with thousands of years ago? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep your curiosity sharp.